Testing one, two. Testing one, two. Testing one, two. Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Sorry about the technical difficulties again. But hopefully everything's good and you can see and hear me just fine. Let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and get started. And welcome to my Sunday live stream where we talk about photography and catch up on how everybody's doing and what I've been up to all week and anything that might be new. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments section or in the chat section. I'll do my best to answer them. But let me just check in who's here. We got lots of usual suspects, but I'm so grateful that all of you come back every week and check in and see how I'm doing, I guess, and if there's anything that um, or anything new, I guess. My streams are always kind of like just turn on the camera, sit down, and just start to talk. I never have a plan or a script or anything. I just like to make myself available and connect with the community every week, and it's really I look forward to it. Um, getting out here in front of everyone and just to be there for you if you need me. And you guys have always been there for me, whether it's in the live stream here in the chat section or in the comments sections. I'm really grateful for the support that I've gotten over the years. And I hope I can return that generosity or kindness to you through this medium they call YouTube. It's nice when we can get together in person, though. Uh, so if you're ever in the DC metro area, Maryland, Virginia, DC, check out the photo club I joined, the Virginia Photography Club run by David Crooks. I try to go out every week with them, and it's a great chance for us to kind of just meet in person and go on a photo walk. So I encourage you to do that. And I should start putting links for that particular group in the comments section, I guess, or not in the comments, but in the description. I'll try and do that going forward. So there's that. And also, it's been photographically speaking, it's been kind of a slow week for me. And, because it's been kind of raining all week. And it's these last few days have been a little bit cool. Like right now, it's like 64 degrees in this room, it's May. It's not supposed to be this cold. Uh, but this coming week is supposed to be more typical spring weather. We'll be in the mid 70s with sunshine most of the day and thunderstorms in the afternoon. I heard my first thunderstorm this morning. And that was kinda cool. It's always a great sign that summer's here or coming. I love the warm weather. I'd love to be down there with Marcia actually in Florida. One day, one day I'm gonna move from this area so I don't have to deal with the winters, and I need to find a place that's just kinda quiet. Cause I went out, you know, 10 days ago or less than 2 weeks, right? I've been going out with the doing those lens reviews, and it's so crowded on the weekends. I mean, it's like I have to park like 5 blocks away from any event, if it's in the streets, right? And, and then walk for 5 or 6 blocks, and, and it's so packed. It's just I don't know, I guess I'm getting older, and I just don't like crowds. I mean, I don't mind events, where there's people there, but when it's just like you're just stepping on each other, it's really hard to even do any photography. Like there was a street performer uh jumping over like four people at a time. So he'd get a running start, and then there'd be four people, kind of in the middle, and he would jump over them and do a flip and land on his feet on the other side. So he had to clear out a big space. So I'm like, "Oh, this would be the best thing ever." Right? Just get an action shot. So I got everything ready. I found a spot and I got down really low, down on my hands and not well, I got down on my knees and put the camera up, and I pointed it, initially where he's going to be coming out from the crowd and then into the open space, do the flip over the four people and land. And I'm like, okay, I'm perfect. And he walked back there and I'm just waiting, right? And I got my focus point set where I want it to in the viewfinder, so that when he comes out, and I'm pretty good at tracking. I can track birds pretty well. I can track a person running, no problem at all, right? And right at that moment, and this is what I mean about crowds. This lady walks out right in front of me, right at that moment when he starts to run out from the crowd. And then, so I lost, it kind of disorientated me. So I looked up like this, and I saw him come out from behind her, right? So I quickly just pointed the camera in that direction. I wasn't even looking in the viewfinder. I just pointed the camera in the direction that he was running and started firing the shutter. So I guarantee my focus point was not on that person. And and when I looked at the images, they weren't. I'll try and find them because I wasn't planning to show you those, but it just came to mind. Uh, so I missed the shot, you know. And then after he did it, he does it one time, and then he'll jibber jabber for like a half an hour, talking about, putting on sort of a show like a stand up comedian. And I'm not going to sit there for that for 30 minutes to get another shot, right? Uh, so I just moved on, and I don't even know if he was going to jump again. Maybe he was done, you know. But I'll give the guy credit though. He's really good stand up kind of guy, and he made golly, he probably made a couple $100 at least. He probably made $400 or $500 for doing one jump, because people were dropping in 20s and 50s into his hat or whatever he was collecting it in, just for doing one jump. And yeah, maybe he made $1,000, because I'm serious. There was several $50 drops into his hat, you know, and many $20 drops. There weren't like a bunch of ones and fives, man. It was like people were dropping some good money. Man, I tell you, that's something. But anyhow, um, this is the problem with crowded, congested, metropolitan type areas. Is It's very frustrating as a photographer. I don't know how these New York City street photographers do it when they're out and about and they're capturing shots. You kind of got to go when it's not busy, I guess, right? Which I do. I like to get out at sunrise to Alexandria and do those morning sunrise shots over the Potomac, and and it's nice and peaceful. The only problem is traffic. Getting there, it's without traffic, it's literally a 15-minute drive, right? It's like just right over the bridge. Less than 15 minutes sometimes to get to the spot that I want to get to. But even at 6 in the morning, it takes me like a half an hour. Time doubles at 6 in the morning to get there. And getting home, I have to wait until about 9 o'clock minimum, which is okay. I can walk around, but there's a catch. There's a catch. I can wait till 9 o'clock so that it only takes me about 25 minutes to get home. But the catch is you have to start to pay for parking at 8 o'clock. So every time I go to Alexandria, it's probably $4 to $6 in gas plus another $4 in parking. Somehow $10 to go for a photo walk at 6 in the morning. It's just not right, you know? Um, yeah, I could park, maybe 5 or 6 blocks away and not pay for parking, but that eats into your time it's just frustrating living in a congested area for so many reasons because you got to pay for parking everywhere, and you gotta work your schedule around traffic, you know, and then when you get there, pray that it's not packed and crowded with people. Um, anyway, that's why I don't do a lot of street photography, but I am gonna start going out and do more photo walks. I got a couple of devices. Uh, I got that Insta 360 Go. The little tiny I was watching Emily, Micro Four Nerds. She really liked it. So I said, let me go get one. It was on sale for Mother's Day. And happy Mother's Day, by the way, everyone. I gotta call my mom. But happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Um, but yeah, I got this Insta 360 Go that you can kind of just clip on. I haven't even opened the box yet. That's how excited I am about the camera. But what I was doing, I bought one of these magnetic necklaces for my Insta 360 that I have, but it's like well, these are the batteries for it, but it's kind of clips on here like this, but it's heavy. It's not like a very light thing, and it kind of droops down. So I did a couple of test runs with it in this busy thing, and it the horizon's crooked half the time, so I have to straighten it in post, and it just was not a good experience for anyone that might wanna watch it, and, I got a demo clip here, actually. A test clip, I should say. Let me see if I can show you. Okay, where is it? Share screen, window, this one, okay. So here's a demo where I edited it and cropped it and tried to straighten the horizon, and it has the image stabilization kind of built in. So the stabilization is not bad considering. Uh, oh, there's my finger. This was, like I said, when I still had my Band-Aid. My Band-Aid's come off, by the way. It's just a scab there now. It still hurts though. So this is what I mean. Uh This was last week or the week before when I was reviewing that lens, and I was trying to get some, like, street footage. So right here, it just golly, man, it's just crazy. I just cannot stand all these people here, and I'm not even in the busy part yet. When I was actually walking away from the, where the street performer was jumping. I got a little clip of him jumping using this dash cam, but it's or not dash cam, but this webcam. I mean, just insane. Let me move up. There's this guy singing here. He didn't make any money. Anyway, there's that. So let me stop. Where's my mouse? Let me stop this. So there's a little sample I was trying. So I'm trying to get out and do some vlogging, like in the streets or photo walks, point of view, and start sharing my thought processes when I'm out doing my photography. But anyhow, so I got the Insta 360 Go, which is not sensitive to position, right? So it'll automatically level the horizon, and but we'll see how the footage is. If it's not any good, I mean, it looked Emily made it look really good. So we'll see how I do with it though, right? Because it's never the camera, right? It's always the person behind the camera is the kind of images you get. The only downside is that you can only record like 30 to 40 minutes uh, due to battery life because it's so small. And then you have to recharge it or keep, I'll work out a workflow so that I can keep it going with me for a few hours. But yeah, because what I used to do is I used to carry a separate tripod together with the tripod that I use for my normal camera, the camera I'm taking pictures with. And then I got my messenger bag. And yeah, it's a hassle to go out and vlog with two cameras and two tripods and a backpack or messenger bag. Kind of like Thomas Heaton, right? He's always out there with two cameras. Now he's using that, whatchamacallit, the DJI. I have one of those. I have the original one, the version 1 DJI Pocket, which is great. Um, but I always worry about breaking the gimbal. So I just use it for work. I use it for doing pole shots. But since I got a 360 camera, I don't really need that anymore either. So the DJI Pocket has kind of lost its place in my collection here in terms of use. And the Insta360, I bought the 1 inch, I bought the nice one they have, and it does a great job. I really like it, for work. I wouldn't use it really for vlogging so much because the workflow of editing 360 video, like Maddie's doing that now. The workflow of editing 360 video is a pain in the butt. Uh, so anyway, I'm going to use the 360 Go 3, it's called. And hopefully that magnetically just clips like right here. And it's not going to be a pain in the ass like everything else I've done. Okay, so let me see the chat section. How we're doing in here. Darko, good to see you. You got a new 28mm Z lens doing street. Oh, the 28 f2 or 28. It's a little pancake lens for the Z mount. That I've heard good things about that lens. I don't like the 40. I've heard good things about the 28, and it's a great focal length for street. Uh, I really like 28 millimeters. And then Darko's asked, do you think the tilt shift lens is worth getting for the kit of lenses of hobby / occasional? Not really. The so I reviewed I forget which company it is, but the 50mm tilt shift lens for I think it was for my Fuji camera. So it's an APS-C and it's a full frame lens, but they have mounts for full frame, APS-C, and micro four thirds. For micro four thirds, a little bit too tight. It's a little too tight for the reasons I would use that lens. Meaning if I want to do miniaturization, like, toy camera effects, and if I want to do tilting, where you kind of shift the plane of focus, I much prefer a wider angle. So it's probably okay on a full frame camera at 50mm, but on anything else is a little tight. And if you want to use it for like product photography or art reproduction, like more serious reasons you would use a tilt lens, right? Because there are actually practical applications. Then that lens is not sharp enough for that, right? It's fine for the enthusiast hobbyist that want to just do things. And at f5.6, it actually is pretty sharp lens at 5.6. And you can do some product photography, art reproduction, things like that, where you need to get the angle right, for all the things that you would use a tilt shift. But the shift function itself at 50mm is not quite useful because it's such a tight field of view. Tilt shift lenses, generally speaking, I think for the enthusiast photographer is better for um, better to get like a wider angle. Minimum 35, but I'd go down to 20, 24, wider if you can. But right around 24 millimeters, between 16 and 24 millimeters is really good for tilt shift because then the shift function for doing panos is really wide. And then the tilt function works really well because you typically use that in architectural type photography, right? Where you have very tall buildings. Um, but when you have a 50 millimeter, you're pretty much limited to doing portraits. It's great for doing portraits and interesting creative portrait type photography. And it's great for product and food photography at that focal length where you're doing tabletop flat lay type stuff. Then 50 millimeters, whether it's on APS-C or full frame, even micro four thirds, although it's a little tight for that, it works great for that. But that's a very limited use case. And when I was using it out in the field, I really had to find really wide open areas. Like I went to the casino at MGM where they have this water fountain thing out there with the sign. And that's pretty wide open space, really nice and beautiful views from the balcony there. But when I was using it like in Alexandria, right, when I was walking around there, I was having a hard time composing and getting shots. And I know lots of people like can compose street photography using a short telephoto lens, but I was having a hard time because it's an effective 75 millimeters. So I would argue that if a wider angle would be better if you want to get a tilt shift. But at 50 millimeters, you probably want to spend more money and get a used Nikon or Canon tilt shift for $500 to $1,000 if you want to do serious flat lay product art reproduction type photography. Um, because they have like an 85 millimeter. They got all the different focal lengths, right? 85, 90 in tilt shift, and those are high quality optics. You can shoot those and get very, very sharp images, and the precision of the dials and everything is a lot better. But this $226 lens is great. I mean, it's a steal really for what you're getting, but yeah, the use case is pretty limited. All right, so Darko has some more here. It says, also, I had my first crack at paid teaching gig as a person messaged me for lessons on street photography. I developed 5 PDF sheets on basic of the craft, like zone focusing, stealth, respect attitude, etc. Bruce Gilden, flash, and face, probably not a good idea. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a fan of street photography in general because uh, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of it, but um, yeah, good luck. I mean, I've done prepared lessons like this, many times, and just a couple of things is have a prepared lesson or lecture, right? Not lecture, but uh, the teaching part, right? Have that organized, outlined, and just have sort of a Cliff Notes version for the students, and then have exercises for them to work on, right? Like for street photography, maybe zone focusing, okay? Uh, have them do some exercise. If I want, everything from 6 feet to infinity in focus, what do my lens settings need to be? Particularly aperture, right? And then how's that going to affect my shutter speed and my ISO? So do these exercises with them as part of the lecture, and then uh, have a little quiz at the end, right? So that's typically how I did it. I did the lectures, class exercises, or if it's one person, it doesn't matter. And then sort of a little quiz, and then go out in the field, set up time to go in the field with them. Um, actual practical experience applying what they learned with you in class, and then have them submit that work to you, uh, via email or whatever medium they want to send it to you, maybe on their Instagram, but have them submit the work to you and you review it and give them some critique, right? Um, so I think that's the way I used to teach. I haven't taught really a class in a while since, we had COVID. I had to, I didn't have access to my classroom anymore, and because the owner went out of business and sold the business. So that was, it was a class. But anyway, um, I think and I found that to be pretty effective. Uh, so the student would have the cliff notes and they would take notes while you lecture them or teach them to supplement the cliff notes that you gave them. Because not everybody needs to know everything, right? So you don't need to prepare. And this is more of a classroom setting where people are coming in at all different levels. So I didn't want to give everybody like a thick, PDF pack, right? I just wanted to give cliff notes. And then for the parts that students were a little bit weaker in, they would add their own notes to that particular section. So I left plenty of room in the PDF for them to make notes. And so they would just make notes on the parts that they were a little bit weak on. And then people that were very familiar with the topic, all they needed was like a little line, right? Um, and so anyway, good luck with that. Let me know how that goes. But it's good. It's good to have them go out in the field and like I said, submitting the work to you uh, for your review. And Wayne, good to see you from California. Gosh, I'm so jealous of California weather. Lauren is out there. Uh, he emails me every week with photos and stuff, and it's great. Um, and let's see, Plato's here from Belgium. Good to see you, Marcia. Hot, hot, hot South. I'm so jealous. I would love it to be. My hands are literally cold. That's why I have them like in my pocket, right now. Not a fan of Florida humidity. It doesn't bother me. I don't mind sweating. Like I was watching a little bit of Robin Wong's stream from yesterday or day before, and he's sweating in his own house, or in whatever space he's in, which I'm like so jealous of. I mean, I don't want to sweat on camera, but not that it's a big deal, but uh yeah, I'm like I can't wait. I can't wait for those hot sweaty days. And John Thomas, good to see you. Uh this photo channel is the godfather of photography. Why would you say that? That's interesting, The Godfather. That was a great series, trilogy. And Thomas, good to see you in Georgia. 17 Celsius. I guess that's 70 degrees, give or take. That's nice. I mean, I love the 70s and the 80s and the 90s temperatures, right? Which is, I guess, anywhere between 17 and 20 Celsius or 17 and 25. I don't know. I don't know Celsius that well, but Bob, good to see you. Bob O'Neill from Norfolk. Oh, you're in Southern Virginia. I've been to Norfolk. It's so pretty out there. And Roberto, always good to see you. Raining all week. Oh, it's opposite there for you, right? Like we're transitioning into warmer weather. You're going into cooler weather. I never think of Australia as cold though, but I think it does get pretty cold there. And Robert, good to see you. Good to see you, Robert. Thank you for the update. You need to get out to the clubs when you can. I guess I could set up my own photo walks because there's a few walks that David sets up that are kind of far away. I don't mind going to sometimes, but um, sometimes I have to stay local. I can't make these long trips. So those are weekends I should set up my own photo walk. And let's see, Liston says, I'm waiting for my used 75 to 300. Just ordered it a day ago. Wow, under 300 bucks. Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely worth the money if it's working and in good condition. And I assume at around 300 bucks it would be. Uh yeah, it's an awesome lens. The 75 to 300, I take that every time I don't want to take out my 300 f4, which is it's not very often, but there are times when I just don't need or I don't want to carry a big heavy lens and I'm not going to get too serious about my birding. But that doesn't mean I can't get great results with the 75 to 300 if I'm doing birding. And that's about the only thing I use it for. Uh, it's a terrific lens. And just shoot it wide open at f6.7 when you're 300 millimeters. The lens is really sharp wide open. You get a tiny bit more on my copy of the lens. I found f9 to be the absolute pinnacle of sharpness for that lens at f9. But you have to pixel peep down to 500-600% to see the difference between like f9 and f6.7. And the loss in light, which is going to push your ISO up, offsets any gain, more than offsets any gain you would get with the tiny bit of sharpness you might get. So it's better to shoot at a lower ISO on that lens wide open, and you'll get really sharp images regardless. A little bit of processing too, and it makes a big deal. Like I've said many times, DxO Photo Lab, I think I get the very best results from my Olympus cameras using DxO Photo Lab 7 in terms of, getting rid of the noise, pulling out the best sharpness and detail. It's just I don't know, it's magic. They really do a really good job. And Marco is here. Good to see you. Wishing everyone a happy Mother's Day. Uh oh yeah, I think Roberta, you have one of these, right? Insta360. They don't last long. Mine came with a little case so that you can drop it in and charge it. So I was thinking, when I'm not recording, I can just put it back in the case, have it charge. I'll figure it out. I'll let you guys know how it goes. Um, and Eric, good to see you, Eric. Um, Eric made a comment on one of my Flickr images. It was a panel I did with the Sony and the tilt shift lens, and it came out really sharp, right? And he was really impressed with that, and he was asking me, "Can I do this on a Micro Four Thirds, or can I do this?" Right? And yeah, easily, right? I easily get excellent pin sharp panoramics or images from my Micro Four Thirds cameras. That when you look at my Flickr page, you really cannot tell any difference between my 60 megapixel A7R5 and the 20 megapixel Pen F or OM1 or whatever Micro Four Thirds camera I'm using. It's really impossible to tell, and a lot of that has to do with the processing using DxO Photo Lab. Like I said, it really pulls out some amazing crispness and sharpness from the raw files. But yeah, I never worry about resolution or getting pin sharp images from almost any camera that I use because of the software DxO. Even my old Panasonic LX5, which is a 10 megapixel tiny sensor camera, right? Look at some of the images that I've posted of that, on my Flickr page, because I try to post the full resolution images. Sometimes I'm not paying attention and I accidentally post a cropped image, but I try to post the full resolution image on my Flickr page so you can download it onto your own computer if you want to, or you can just zoom in on the Flickr page itself. Just go to flickr.com/robtrek, and I created several albums of different lens. I'm getting there. It's getting better. Let me just pull up an example. So this was the image that Eric commented on, uh, about the, and this was the 50 millimeter tilt lens. So I pointed him to my other album here where I have my panoramas. And this was shot with the EM1 Mark II. And this image is, let's see, this image is 12,000 by 5,600 pixels, right? Whatever this number is. So, uh, 80 megapixels base, or I wrote it here, 72 megapixels, just 3-shot pano. And this is sort of a collage I made showing a close-up. But basically, right in this part of the picture are these. So you can look at this. And this was shot with the EM1 Mark II. This one was the EM5 Mark III with a 7 Artisans. I always try to make sure the exif data is correct also. But this one, it just even a third party lens. This is the Pen F with the 40 to 150 kit lens. And you can just see how crisp and sharp these are. And if you scroll down, you'll see more images shot like this. This was the Sony A7R5, I believe. Oh no, this is the Fujifilm X-H2. uh, but if you're sharing your things online, you're not really going to see much difference. This is the Panasonic LX5, which is a 10 megapixel tiny sensor camera, right? And just look at the detail I got out of this. So that's why I never worry about what camera I'm going to take with me when it comes to capturing images or doing the photography part of itself, right? So I could take any one of these here. This is the DF, this is the M5 Mark III, this is the XH2, back there is the A7R5. My OM1 is out on a tripod out of my studio because I'm doing a review on a Smoke Ninja thing. And then of course that shelf back there, my Pen F. And I took out the LX100 Mark II that David let me borrow. And he said he was not getting good images out of it. Now I can get sharp images, but the colors, I'm having a little bit of trouble with the colors on it. I'm not digging the colors I'm getting. Now, granted, it's been raining all week, so that's part of it. But even so, it feels like I'm gonna have to mess with the color profiles or the somehow. But I'm shooting raw, so what difference does it make? If it's not gonna make any difference. So I have to figure out the raw processing for that camera that looks good to me. Because as it is now, it's kind of got this cool. I don't know how to explain it. The LX100 has it. It's not like my LX5 where I really like the colors coming out of it. Meaning I don't have it. It's not objectionable, right? But the colors coming out of this camera, the raw images, something is off about them. They lack a certain warmth to them. And just shifting the white balance and playing with that was not cutting it. It's something about the way they're processing the greens and blues. So I'm gonna have to work out a profile that looks good. Uh, when I had my Panasonic S1R, and I'm looking at one now. Oh man, I don't know why. I don't know why, but I did like that camera. But anyway, I did like the colors coming out of that, straight out of camera, and I just need a little bit of tweaking here and there sometimes of the white balance that, for whatever reason. But I didn't have to tweak the colors at all. Just like my Olympus cameras, I don't have to tweak the colors, like shift the hue and the saturation on things when I'm fine tuning stuff. But this LX100, I feel like I'm gonna have to. And then I think once I get that down, then I'm gonna, because it takes sharp images. The second thing that set me back a little bit on this LX100 was the background bokeh is a little bit busy. I didn't expect that. It's not as creamy as I thought it would be so far. I've only done a dozen or so shots with it, but I'm a little bit put off by that and the color science. The color science I can fix in post eventually, but the background blur rendition of the out of focus areas, whether it's, just a little bit blurry or a lot blurry, I'm having a little bit of discomfort there, so to speak. So I'm starting to understand what he means by he's not able to get good images out of it because there's just little things here and there about the images that are just kind of setting me off a little bit like, ugh, I don't like this part. I don't like this part. And I can fix some things and not others, I think. Let's see. Thomas says, can the viewfinder on the EM10 Mark II easily be replaced? I misstepped on a very muddy trail after a rain and inadvertently scratched the view sign. I don't know, honestly. I'm sorry, Thomas. I've never had to do that or never heard anyone doing it. And Eric has a question. Rob, you have the 300 f4. Saw a live shot where you compared it to the 75 to 300. Is it worth the price? The 300 Pro will most likely be my last. It is definitely worth the price. If you can get it used for like 2,000, it's a steal. At full price, now that it's 3,000, because you used to be able to get that lens brand new for about 2,500 years ago when it came out. But now that it's like 3,000, I guess with inflation, it still makes sense to me. I bought mine brand new, but I traded a bunch of stuff in, and it was on sale for like 200 bucks off when I got it. So I paid like 27.50, and then I traded in a bunch of stuff, and I got it for like 800 bucks altogether. So it's definitely worth it because that live stream I did comparing the 75 to 300 with the 300 f4 were mostly static shots, birds on a stick, on a log, not birds in flight so much. And the light was extremely good, right? It was a very bright day. And because of the post processing with DxO, it's able to squeeze out a lot of detail from both lenses. Uh, so you get very close to that uh, sort of line of where you've resolved about just about every pixel you possibly can from a lens. And in certain situations, the 75 to 300 can, for all intents and purposes, match what the 300 f4 can do. The images without pixel peeping look pretty much the same. So how does that justify spending 6 times as much money, right? Well, there's a lot more to the 300 f4 than just the sharpness, because the sharpness is amazing. Okay, you can get amazing sharpness on that corner to corner. Whereas the 75 to 300, once you start to get out towards the edges, you start to lose a little bit of sharpness. It gets a little bit muddy. Whereas the 300 f4, it's sharp corner to corner. So when you're doing birds in flight and that bird is in the corner of the frame, it's not ideal, right, compositionally. But if you want to extract and use that image, you can because it's going to be tack sharp. Uh, Also, the focusing speed, right, of the 300 f4 is so much faster. You're not, if you want to shoot at 50 frames per second, you can go for it with that lens. The image stabilization in the lens, when you're shooting at slower shutter speeds, like 1/500th of a second, bird on a stick type shots, 1/1000th of a second, is so much more stable than just the 75 to 300 shooting at the same shutter speeds. Now, when you're shooting at 1/2000th 1/3000th and higher, you don't really need the image stabilization at all anyway, right? It makes really no difference at those shutter speeds, but it makes a big difference when you're slowing it down to get more light into the camera. So so in that sense, sorry, there was a noise outside. In that sense, these now I lost my train of thought. Whatever I was saying, I hopefully got the idea. I can't remember now. But yeah, and that extra stop and a third, right? Because it's, yeah, 1 and a third stop difference between the 75 to 300 makes a big difference, right? So instead of shooting at ISO 3200, you can shoot at ISO 1600 with a 300 f4. Um, so the focusing speed, the extra stop and a third, the image stabilization, just to name a few, right? The corner to corner sharpness, and the lens is sharper ultimately than the 75 to 300 ever will be. You will be able to, it's because when you're trying to extract very, very fine feathers from the birds and things, uh, 300 f4, you're definitely going to see a difference. Now you have to pixel peep a lot to see the difference, and a lot of times you have to do a lot of cropping anyway. And when you're doing a lot of cropping with the 75 to 300 versus the 300, you'll see the difference there as well. And you'll be able to get much more detailed images from the 300 f4. So, and then, getting into um, chromatic aberrations and all these little, those are kind of not very important characteristics you need to worry about in a super telephoto lens. They're not there to begin with, and even if they were, it's not as big a deal on super telephoto lens because you're usually filling the frame with the subject, and those minor defects really don't come into play as much. It's when you're shooting wide angle, when you have to worry about chroma and purple fringing and all of these other things that mess up the entire image, right? But when you're filling the frame with your subject on a super telephoto, uh, it's not, there's not as many edges and corners and things you have to worry about, or contrast and light. Anyway, yeah, short answer is yes, definitely worth it. And the other obvious comparison is the 150 to 600 lens. If you need that kind of reach, yeah, get the 150 to 600 because it's double the length without that much loss in light, and it looks to be very, very sharp lens. It's never going to be a 300 f4, but some people would rather have that reach than they would that extra stop of light or sharpness. And pairing the 300 f4 with the 1.4 teleconverter, I'm extremely happy with. The singular advantage, other than the extra reach that you get with the 150 to 600, is being able to zoom in and out. It takes some practice to get good at tracking with a prime 300 millimeter, right? I'm pretty good at it now. I if I went more often, I'd be really good at it. But when I get out in the field, after about an hour or so, I'm pretty much, it's like riding a bike. I'm pretty much back to seeing a bird in the sky and bip, I can get up there and in a split second, I can get it in the frame. But for a lot of people, they like to track the bird. So they zoom out and they're tracking it and then they zoom in and get the shot. And that's certainly a very good way to get a lot of more interesting shots, I think, than me just going up with a prime, because sometimes you want to capture a little bit wider angle. You don't want to fill the frame with the bird, right? So there's a lot of advantages to having a zoom lens. And the 75 to 300 is great for that, I think. But the 150 to 600, that's a different beast altogether. And I think uh, you have to give that some thought, which lens to get, because I think you'll get great results with either lens. But the 300 f4, there's just no substitute for prime versus zoom. The prime is always going to be better. And Robin Wong is here. Hello, Robin. Good to see you. Says, just got home from a full day of shooting, morning street, afternoon mini concert. Wow, processing the images while listening to your soothing voice. I appreciate that, Robin. I wish I could make your streams live more often. But they're right in the middle of the day for me, or in the mornings when I'm kind of busy doing stuff. And I try to listen in the background if I'm home, but um, you're so good at your streams and so efficient, and just it always amazes me how somebody can ask you a question, you can give a good answer instantly. A lot of times I have to think and I fumble and I'm like, oh, let me try this, but like you're like this. You're on top. You're at the pinnacle, right? Well, maybe not the pinnacle, but you're really at the top of your game right now, and I'm sure it will only get better with time. And then it says, I've had so many bad experiences with Karens and Kens berating me for taking photos in public places that I've pretty much abandoned street photography other than building the street scenes without people. Yeah, I've had my run-ins. I mean, everyone's experience is different, and how they take that, right? Because some people it just brushes right off them and they don't care and they keep going. And ultimately you run into enough people that don't mind you taking their picture, right? You can ask them, or you're getting a candid shot, they don't care. Like, I don't care. If I see a person with a camera, you know, I don't care if they're taking my picture or if I'm in the scene, right? Uh, but yeah, occasionally you'll run into people that don't take it well, and uh, it affects me, right? I just don't like it. Other people, they just brush it off and keep going, you know? And then Rob, have you used any of your Olympus lenses on Fujifilm camera with adapter? Oh, hey, John. I'm experimenting now actually with the Sony A7R5 and Olympus OM uh, film lenses, right? So, like right now, I have the 51.8 adapted to the Sony, and it's working out nicely. And you can see it's even with the adapter on it, because the OM system lenses were relatively compact. Uh, it's not it's not taking up that much room. I mean, it's still very comfortable to use, and it's not awkward. Unlike when I put this on my Pen F, it's a little bit awkward. It's not bad, but it's not the same as having a full-on grip. And on the Fujifilm, I'm going to try it on that camera as well, because I do have the adapters. I haven't actually done it yet, but I want to try and use these vintage lenses with the Fujifilm simulations and just go full on, retro, digital retro, which is different than actually shooting film, right? But we're going to go full digital retro with the Fujifilm using vintage lenses, because I have some Nikon glass that I just love. I love my 105 f2.5 Nikon, and the 200 f4. It's amazing lens. And I have some good, really great Minolta glass that I really like, my 51.4 Roker. So I'm going to get out and do all these things, and I'm going to vlog, hopefully vlog with that successfully. I'm struggling with vlogging lately. But anyway, I'm going to vlog with these lenses now that the weather is going to be awesome this week. It's not bad right now, actually. It rained this morning, but it's not bad right now. I want to vlog with these lenses on these various cameras, because what I like about using, let's say, full frame APS-C is when you adapt a lens to it, a vintage lens, the focal length is not doubled, right? Because on Micro Four Thirds, I have a 24 millimeter full frame lens, the OM24 f2.8, and that's perfectly fine on my Olympus camera. but it's yeah, otherwise, if I'm trying to shoot at 35 or 50 millimeter on a micro four thirds, doubling that, I'm into short telephoto range, right? And it's not ideal for street or the kind of photography that I do. I prefer much wider angles, like 28 is kind of one of my favorite focal lengths right now. And, I'd have to find a 14 millimeter full frame to do that. And that's just not. So, short answer is no, I haven't done it yet, but I am planning on it. I do have the adapters for it. It might have been you actually. Someone asked me use if I could use these OM lenses on my Sony camera. And I said, okay, I'll try. So I'm working on that right now. Maybe I can add the Fuji into that, but the Fuji is going to multiply that. So that 50 will be a 75. My 35 will be a 50, right? And then the 24 will be a 35 or 30. Anyway, whatever the field of view works out to. But also the image quality is looking really good when I have it in focus, right? I have to get good at manual focusing again. I'm not bad, but the image quality is really good. But I've only taken pictures around my house right now, where I'm standing there taking my time to focus and making sure I have everything straight. So when I take it out in the field and shoot, that'll be the real test of how these lenses perform. Uh, and I'll do some standardized testing for them, charts and vignetting and aberrations. I'll do some standard tests for them just for frame of reference. Not that that's important with these lenses. The charm of these lenses are these kinds of defects that make the lenses give it their character, so to speak, that people want to see or people enjoy. Not everybody wants to see it, but some people enjoy taking images like that, right? And Robin says, "Yes, I sweat in my room because I turned off the ceiling fan, which caused some annoying noise." Yeah, I thought that's why you got the dynamic mic instead of using condenser, right? But I struggle with that early on in my live streaming. So, uh, two things that I've done is I don't use my ceiling fan anymore, just like you, right? Because the little chain would wobble and make this clicking sound. But I just use a very, very small fan that's very quiet, and I put it way back in the corner of my room, and I turn it on in the summer. And then also, the microphones these days and software are so good at noise canceling that there were some live streams last year where I had the air conditioner running while I was doing the live stream, and you really couldn't tell that. And my air conditioner is not quiet. It's not one of the new ones that are super quiet. It's just an old piece of crap that I bought 20 years ago. My God, I've had that AC a long time. It's amazing it still works at all. I think it's the one from 20, or did I buy a new one? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's the old one. I did buy a new one for my bedroom, which ironically is louder than this one here. I thought it was supposed to be quiet, but um yeah, I just put a very small fan that's quiet. It's this one. This one here. This one is pretty quiet. And it gives me a nice little breeze during the stream. Not today though, man. It's cold. Oh. And Sister Matura, good to see you. Good to see you. You're not out of the country taking pictures this weekend, huh? How is the Nikon DF focusing and image quality? All right. So the Nikon DF, the image quality is just out of this world for me. Um, there's a certain depth or crispness to it, even though it's only 16 megapixels. That camera really makes some, I think, amazing images. The tonality, the color science. When I'm working with I'm working with the RAWs. We're not talking about JPEG because JPEGs are, a whole different color science, right? But working with the RAWs, the colors I'm getting from it uh, are really some of the most beautiful colors and depth to them that only a Nikon DF can do. A 16 megapixel full frame from Nikon back in the day. When I do the black and whites, I see some really amazing tonalities and depth to the images. And I'm not talking about shallow depth of field, but just a certain depth or feeling that I get from the images. I don't have a lot. I haven't shot with it a lot. There are some on my Flickr page. I don't think I've put them into an album separately, so it might take some digging to find them. But uh, I would say hands down the image quality, it's probably the very best camera that I have in terms of image quality, even though it's only 16 megapixels. Uh, and then focusing is, it is what it is. It's that old school DSLR autofocus, and it's perfectly fine for point and shoot. I haven't tried it for sports action type stuff. I don't know if you're thinking about that, forget it. But for point and shoot, I haven't really had any issues. It's a little slow. It's not like our Olympus or mirrorless cameras in general. So, because it's mechanical, I'm using the old screw drive type autofocus lenses with it. I don't think I have any G lenses for it. I sold all of my G lenses when I got rid of my when I stopped using my D750. I got rid of all my G lenses and I just kept the my old D lenses and AI lenses. But yeah, and that's the other thing is, it's just being able to adapt the old screw mount lenses and AI lenses to the camera directly without adapters is just something nice about that as well. Um, I guess on that yeah, so that camera's still going for quite a bit right now though. The price has gone up on it. Let me see, Nikon DF. Uh, jeez, they're asking 1,000. That's crazy. Let me see. Oops. Where's my screen for? Yeah, 1,000. That's why is my screen? Oh, there we go. I lost my screen. Why? There we go. Sorry about that. Uh, so the autofocus is fine. It's probably better with G lenses that don't have the screw drive, but I haven't tried any because I don't have any more G lenses left. And George, how are you? Good morning. It says, tell your mother that we are grateful to her for creating such. Thanks, I appreciate that. I'll let her know. She knows what a great son she has. She tells me all the time how lucky she is, and you know how moms are. They just love their kids, right? Regardless. I could be in prison, for embezzlement or something, and she'd be like, "I love my son. He's the best ever." And nearly once sold my 300 f4 when I bought the 150 to 400 Pro lens, but glad I didn't. Often now using the 300 f4 on overseas trips is relatively small. Yeah, it is smaller than the 150 to 400. And the 150 to 400, man, the big white is like Man, that is I'm sure, from what I've heard, and I think you're one person that's told me that the image quality between the 2 is pretty much the same. Um, that I'm not missing anything by having the 300 millimeter other than the zoom capability. And Hotel 12, do you have any suggestion on how to get slow sync flash effects on sports shooting? Problem is that on my OM1 Mark II works only slow sync flash with P and A mode, or is it a problem? Oh, let me think. I assume you want rear curtain flash, right? Because you want the person frozen at the end of the motion. So if they're moving and stop, you want this part in focus or showing frozen, and then behind them blurry, right? Like a light streak or something. Oh, I don't have any. I'm sorry, hotel. It's not something I do on a regular basis or ever. I understand the theory, right, of what you're trying to do, but I don't have any practical experience, unfortunately, with doing sports shooting and flash. But I didn't know it only works in P and A mode. It should work in any mode, I would think. But yeah, sorry, I don't have any advice. It's a little beyond my scope here. And Gordon says sunny morning on West Coast in Canada. Nice. Great weather, although forest fire is already getting to be Yeah, that forest fire last year that we had, you know, the smoke from Canada came all the way down to where I live, and it was like just cloudy and yellow all the time. It's terrible. Hopefully you guys can get that under control because that was not much fun, and it smelled funny too, right? Smelled like burnt trees. Smelled like a fireplace all the time. Um, Slow sync is only valid on one Mark II in P&A mode, but maybe second curtain would work. Yeah, I would try second curtain or rear curtain sync. And Simon says, yes, I'm back in London. Just got back from Cyprus testing the G9 Mark II for video and photos. Some interesting results. Oh, good. Please do share. Uh, Used camera prices seem to be going up. I know. It's insane. And Philippe Michael Safre. Wow, what an awesome name. I hope I pronounced that right. Philippe Michael Safre. I love that name. I love your name. Anyway, if Canon new subscription business model will be true camera like FX35 C70 will be super high. I'm not familiar with the subscription business model you're talking about. I don't understand. Do you subscribe and get a free camera every year like cell phones? So here's a free camera, pay us 50 bucks a month, and then you can upgrade every year. Like a cell phone business? I don't understand. I'm sorry. I don't follow Canon, generally speaking. Yes, behind blur. Yeah, so yeah, try rear curtain sync. Okay, so hopefully I got to all the chat. If I missed anyone's questions, let me just double check. No, I think I got them all. If I missed a question, just type it in again. I'll try and get it. I do miss some sometimes. I don't skip any intentionally. I just miss them sometimes unintentionally. But yeah, without any question, I'm just kind of just a guy sitting in a chair, jibber jabbering about my own life. Nobody cares about me, right? I want to try and help you guys as much as I can. Forest fire landscapes are my newest photographic genre. Oh, interesting. Um, just be safe, I guess. I would be a little concerned safety-wise. If there was a fire, I usually go in the opposite direction. Maybe Robin has an answer. Yeah, Robin, if you have an answer. First of all, I don't have the OM1 Mark II, and this is where we're getting into confusing territory because I'm getting comments now where people are saying the OM1, I'm sorry, the OM10 Mark II, OM10 Mark III. What they really mean is EM10, right? Not OM10. Uh, so when you say OM1 Mark II, are you sure you mean the very newest one they released, or do you mean the EM1 Mark II? Because people are getting that confused, and I understand, right? It's not, this naming convention, it was confusing when it was only Olympus. Never mind adding OM systems in and then mixing it up even more, right? Uh, so yeah, that needs some clarity usually is, do you mean EM1 or OM1? And oh, we got some feedback here. Citizen Nature says the Genome Mark II produced some good close to mid-range using OM system 40 to 150 lens. The video is another ball game. I could chat for ages with the options and not so clear formats. Yeah. Yeah, there's a ton of video options in Panasonic cameras. When I had my uh, S5 and S1R, I miss the S1R. Anyway, there were so many options, and oh, let me get some water real quick. Oh, Robin is responding here. May I know which flash is being used? Some third-party flashes may not be fully compatible with rear front curtain sync. It's true. Now, I know some flashes will just say front sync, and then you set rear sync in the camera, and the camera will force it to do rear sync, even though the flash itself may not technically be compatible. But whatever Robin tells you, try that and experiment, right? As always. And the M Mark II and III works with the FL50R that I use in whichever flash modes. Okay. Uh, and Vaughn says, what are the best OM system OM1 best settings for video without planning to color grade afterwards? Just use natural. So you're going to shoot in 8-bit mode, right? Uh, which I believe is going to force you in H.264. That's doesn't matter. Shoot a natural color profile. Some people like to adjust the natural color profile and dial in like a -2 on the sharpness because they find it a little bit crispy. So you can dial in -2 on the sharpness and natural color profile, auto white balance. Uh, yeah, I have a video on it actually for vlogging, and I do talk about the log profiles a little bit, but I think I also demo the natural color profile. So check my video on best settings for vlogging on the OM, I think it was the OM1, and that'll give you more detail than I'm saying here. But long story short, natural color profile. And also I like to dial in a +3 exposure comp on when I'm shooting in program mode or aperture priority. If you're shooting in full manual, then just adjust the exposure about +3 EV. Um, especially if you have darker skin tones. I like it. I want to make sure that, the face and the person is exposed and a little bit, bright enough compared to the rest of the scene. Even if the background gets blown out exposure wise, it's okay. It's better to have the person a little bit brighter than the rest of the scene, generally speaking. So I always dial in about a +3. And I do that with most of my photography. If I'm taking pictures of people, I generally dial in a +3 with the exception of indoors. Indoors, I still dial in a +3 for lighter complexions, ironically, but for darker complexions, I leave it at 0. I don't dial in, uh, because the camera is going to try and raise the exposure for darker complexions, and it raises it just the right amount. But people with lighter skin, the camera is gonna try and underexpose it a little bit, right? Because the skin is bright. So I have to raise it back up again. So it's very, very subtle things. And the same thing would apply to video of if you're doing video of people. If you're doing video of just other things, nature, landscape, you can adjust accordingly to whatever the scene is. But I never color grade anymore. For my paid work, I do color grade a tiny bit. I still shoot in natural color profile sometimes, but for the most part, I shoot in a log profile and then I grade it uh, for the client. And we're talking about architectural type stuff where I'm dealing with extremely high contrast scenes, very bright sunlight coming into the windows and very dark interiors, usually black furniture, black desks against, an outdoor window. it's not it's not easy. So I have to shoot in log to try to maximize my dynamic range. But for my vlogging and general purpose video, I always shoot natural color profile. Sometimes I shoot in art using art filters just for a little more effect. +3 as in 3/3, no, uh, 0.3. Yeah, 0.3 EV. 0.3 EV for lighter skins and 0 EV for darker complexions. It's like I said, the camera tends to raise the exposure too high for lighter skins. I'm sorry, too it exposes darker things properly and brighter things it underexposes, so I like to raise it. I'm not sure how to articulate that properly. Darker complexions it exposes pretty well. Lighter complexions it tends to underexpose, so I have to bring it back up. Um, for people with really, really dark skin, almost black, right? I would probably dial in negative zero point 0.3 EV. I've not run across that situation consistently enough that I need to do that. I can just fix it in post processing, right? But, you know, I do run into, darker to brighter complexions all the time. And if I'm consistently working with one complexion, I will dial in that exposure compensation. Uh, Otherwise, I just leave it at plus zero point 0.3 if I'm going to be shooting people a lot. And if I run into someone with darker complexion randomly, or it's a mix 50-50, whatever, it's easy enough to fix in post processing a third of a stop by just bringing the exposure down a little bit for darker complexions and and then bringing it up a little for lighter complexions if I need to. But that's my rule of thumb. Also, might as well hog your attention. What metering modes do you use? Do they change for wildlife, street, and interior? I most of the time I use the matrix or like where the camera just averages the entire scene um, for my paid work because I'm bracketing, so it doesn't really matter how far off. The camera's not going to be that far off with the what does Olympus OM system call their matrix metering? But it's like looking at the entire scene and trying to figure out the exposure on its own. I just use that for work because I'm bracketing. And then I usually then I pick the one that looks best to me for my paid work and blend that with flash. So it's a much more complicated process. So it almost doesn't matter what metering mode I use it for my architectural stuff because I'm bracketing. I just select, the matrix metering. God, what do they call it? EIS or AI? I forget what Olympus OM system calls it. For my wildlife pictures where I'm trying to capture one or two birds in a frame, I use center weighted metering. But I dial in exposure comp constantly. So I'm in auto ISO with center weighted metering, hopefully getting the bird in the center of the frame. So it gets me some of the way there. But ultimately, with sports action wildlife, I have to dial in exposure comp. So if it's a bird against a bright sky, I'm going to have to dial in +2 exposure comp, depending on the bird. If it's a black bird, +3 exposure comp, +4. I mean, a lot. But rule of thumb is I dial in against bright skies +1 or 2 exposure comp. Bird on a stick with a lot of brush, I can dial in a negative or 0, just leave it, and I'm on center weighted metering. The exception being is if the bird has a predominantly white feathers, then I dial in a -2 or 3 exposure comp, typically 2, but sometimes 3, depending on the background. And this comes with practice. You're going to be able to look at a scene and a bird and use center weighted metering and dial in the exposure comp you need to expose for the subject properly. And that's only going to come with practice. Uh, and But yeah, so I'll look at a scene. If the bird is like a blue heron, which is kind of a neutral gray color for the most part, you would think just don't dial any exposure comp, but they have a white feathers on the top and white feathers down their neck in the front, right? And then there's speculars. If they're in the water fishing, there's speculars sometimes coming off the water. So I typically dial in a -1, sometimes -2 for blue herons, but typically -1 exposure comp for a blue heron so that I don't clip the white feathers in their on the top of their head. Egrets, great white egrets, typically they're an all white bird. Yeah, I dial in -2, -3 all the time for them. Um, except if they're flying in the sky. Then I don't need to do that, right? So again, it's practice and getting experience with different types of colored birds and different backgrounds. But auto ISO with exposure comp, usually I'm in shutter priority. So if the bird is on a stick, I'm at 1/500th of a second with IBIS turned on. If they're flying, minimum 1/2000th of a second to 1/4000th of a second. Typically, the IBIS is turned off. Center weighted metering, exposure comp is needed. Oh, ESP. Thank you. Thank you. ESP. Yeah, I typically for work I just use ESP because I'm bracketing anyway. For for people, depends on the camera, but I use face detect on the OM1, and it seems to expose for the face just fine when I have face detect turned on. But that's when I dial in the +3, depending on complexion and location and all of that. Again, all of that comes with experience. What zebra? I don't use zebras at all in video because I don't video people. Uh, I just use I dial in. Typically, I dial in plus +0.7 or 1 stop when I'm doing video for my architectural. Because I don't mind clipping highlights in architectural photography. But I need to make sure that the shadow areas have the detail I need with no noise. Clipping highlights in architectural photography is not a big deal for the work that I do because nobody cares. Because typically when I'm clipping highlights, I'm indoors and it's whatever's outside of the building, like the light coming in through the windows, is way too bright. So I don't care about clipping. Nobody wants to see what's outside. They want to look at what's inside the building. So I dial in typically plus point 0.7 or plus 1 exposure comp when I'm doing video indoors. But zebras, yeah, that's for doing skin tones generally. And I think rule of thumb is 80%, but I've never used zebras in my life. I mean, I've played with it here and there, but I've never used it for any vlogging or videos that I've done. I've never used it in paid work, certainly. In my paid work, again, my videos are generally simply architectural. Occasionally, I'll do videos where the broker will be in the shot where they're talking about the property, and I'm just using ESP metering, and I dial same thing. I dial in uh, point 0.7 EV, and I'd rather bring the shadows down in post processing if they're too bright, and get a clean image in the shadows. And trying to save highlights in video is an uphill battle. You really have to be in very controlled situations to save highlights. If you're kind of in a random uh, on-site, sight unseen type situation. But to save highlights in video, you have to really prep time of day, location, all of these things. Maybe use these giant scrims. I mean, it's a lot of work to save highlights in video and get beautiful video. I mean, using these really expensive cameras that have these 14, 16-bit dynamic range in video, that's for professional use, and or it's a crutch, right? For people that just have more money than than work. I don't know how to say that without offending anyone, but uh, most of the work done in high-end video is nothing to do with the camera. They have everything set up to a point to where you could use an iPhone and get beautiful footage, no clipped highlights. Everything is set up and timed perfectly. Uh, and then the camera is not as important. But yeah, so for me, I give up on highlights in my work, and I try to overexpose slightly and bring it down. And let's see. Rob, are you going to bring back live DxO photo editing? I've yet to use the software as my softwares are Lightroom, Denoise, and Helicon. Yeah, I can do one. Uh, what's today, Sunday? I'll try and do one on Tuesday. Why not? Okay. I'll try and do one on Tuesday. Let's see, I have to think if it's gonna be morning or evening. Because if I do it in the morning, it's a little easier for people you know, in the UK and that whole European area to watch. If I do it in the evening, it's easier for people here. But either way, you can always watch it after, right? It's over. Uh, and OM Workplace, I assume you mean space, but I never use that. It's great for being free, but garbage compared, yeah. The only real limitation to OM Workspace is you can't do local adjustments. And I'm really big on doing local adjustments. Because I like to emphasize certain parts of light and shadow or details in the image. I like to emphasize, and you can really only do that with local adjustments sometimes. And then Cisno Tour says, never use zebra or peak on video photos. Just need to see exactly what I'm shooting. And in wildlife, you rarely get time to get photos or even video footage. Yeah. And System Mature does a lot of video work. He's hardcore enthusiast. I don't know if he's done anything professionally, but definitely a hardcore enthusiast. So we're in there. And Robert, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Um, that's awesome. All the generosity of my viewers have been just amazing, and I'm so grateful for the super chats, the donations and my links, and or just sending me gear. It's always been one of the great, I guess, a very privileged position I'm in that you know you guys can do that for me. It's because trust me, I don't make any money other than off this YouTube stuff and the occasional photo job I get in the real world. And so every dollar, every penny helps um, so much. You have no idea. Let's see, and then oops, yes, I need to have a serious look at DxO software when I get back from my next trip in Portugal. It's definitely awesome. It's awesome software. I like it. I mean, it doesn't do everything, and it has a lot of annoying things. Like, it's hard to compare images side by well, not hard. It's impossible. You can't compare two images side by side, right? Which I do a lot. So I have to end up exporting it and using a different software to compare them. I use Faststone. It doesn't do a lot of things. You have to get third-party stuff, panoramas, HDR, focus stacking. None of that is in DxO Photolab. DxO Photolab is about getting the very best image you can out of a single raw image, right? When you're working with them one at a time, and it does that exceptionally well. To the point that I can live with the compromises that it has with other features. Um, which to me are minor because I pay that $10 a month for Adobe and for Photoshop Lightroom. I don't hardly use Lightroom much anymore, but Photoshop I still use time to time for my paid work because of the layering that I have to do. Uh, but when I'm editing images, I pre-process all of my images for my paid work and my personal stuff in DxO if I have to take it into Photoshop. I pre-process everything with noise reduction, optical correction, sharpness, etc., right? And then I start using Photoshop and other stuff if I need to do layering or something that DxO cannot do. And thanks, Rob, and your great channel. Have fun. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Hotel. Uh, and it says, I've never been professional and just like getting out and shooting photos and videos is great fun. Yeah, it is. It's awesome. I want to get out today. I've turned down about 4 or 5 product reviews in the last week because I just want to go out and shoot like, you know, oh, I just want to shoot like regular and enjoy my time instead of worrying about, is this going to be relevant in the video? Uh, I mean, I still got things queued up that I have to get done that I've committed to. Uh, I have the smoke machine, which I'm almost done with. Hopefully, I'll get that cranked out by tomorrow or Tuesday. And then I have one lens coming in, probably in about a week. And that's okay. I don't mind reviewing lenses too much. And that's it. I've turned down so many things. I turned down uh someone offered me an ambassador for their entire brand. I said no. So I appreciate that, but it's better to be kind of independent than be associated with a particular brand. Uh I mean, you have to question the credibility of reviews in general because most of the time the products are given to us, right? In exchange for doing the review. And I I try to take ones, even if they're very low ticket items, 50, $60 items, $100 lenses. I don't mind doing them, even though the time spent doing them is, you know, is, you know, God, I spend a good 40, 50 hours reviewing a lens of my time for $100 lens. But I do it because it's cheap and and a lot of people, they need a budget lens that's decent. So it's good to have, like Dustin Abbott and others, Christopher Frost have a huge collection of lenses over time that, when you watch them review a lens, it has a certain credibility now because they've tried so many lenses, hundreds of lenses. Um, so I feel like I need to kind of go in that direction where I have experience with these lenses and, then because when I say a lens is good, how much lens experience do I really have, right? I've been only shooting for 10 or 12 years and primarily micro four thirds in the last 6 or 7 years. And I've been using primarily Olympus glass. And before that, I got rid of, I don't know. So I want to build up sort of that. And then a lot of times I end up giving the lenses away to, or selling them cheap, in the photo club if I can. That's my goal anyway. I've given a couple lenses away, and because I already have the lens covered or I don't use that camera that much, like I don't see myself using the 50 millimeter tilt shift at all. Because I'd rather shoot wider and handle it in post processing is what I normally do anyway. And I don't care about the toy tilt shift effect. So, which can also be done in post processing, right? So I don't have much use for the tilt shift lens. So I'm thinking about what mount was that? A Fuji? I'm sure there's some Fuji shooters in my photo club that might want it for like half price or something, right? Uh, so if you're in the photo club with me and you have a Fuji camera, I'll sell you the tilt shift lens for half what it retails for. Um, and oops, wow, a bunch of chat came in all of a sudden. Okay, Eric, yeah, download the trial. I use DJI 2 for most of my video work nowadays. Yeah, the DJI 2, I assume you're talking about the Pocket 2, has a slightly larger sensor than mine, but I get by even with mine when I did paid work. But, I'm not charging a lot either, right? It's not a high-end production type video. It's just a showcase of a property usually. Uh, do a series on the Pen F would be sweet. It's the X106 for us M43 peeps, except it would make them even more unaffordable. Yeah, I know. There's always that risk, right? When I watch a video of a camera I'm interested in, particularly one that's not made anymore, I'm like, "Oh, man, if I go to eBay right now, the price is gonna be double what it was a week ago," right? So if I start talking about the Pen F, is that gonna drive the Pen F prices? I'm not saying I have that kind of influence, but you never know, man. Like, video could take off, like, go viral for no reason, and then all of a sudden the Pen F is $2,000. Ugh. But yeah, the Pen F, that is my go-to camera, my daily, everyday camera. I like taking it out more than anything else I have. Honestly, if you're doing a review, I feel all streamers that do that should be paid. If you're giving them free advertising and time is money. Yeah, I get it. You know, the problem is if I actually get paid to do a review, right? Like paid money, not just given a product. Like they give me this thing. Generally, I can say whatever I want about this. All they did was give me this. It's not worth my time. in terms of value, right? Uh, but if they're paying me, suddenly they usually have key points that I need to tell you in the video, that it has this, this, and this feature. I have to demonstrate those features, and I have to demonstrate it in the best light possible, right? Like, if I'm reviewing a lens, and let's say the lens is a little soft wide open, I need to use the lens where that softness is mitigated and or used to its advantage. Uh, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here, but I have gotten offers to get paid for reviews, but that always came with all these stipulations. Demonstrate this, talk about this, you know, um, make sure you don't have any other products in the video that might be in the background, like things like that, right? So don't do comparisons against this. There was all these stipulations. I get these offers time to time, and I'm like, it's enough work just to it's a lot of work just to review something for free. Never mind getting paid for one and then having a certain level of expectation from the person paying you, which is, understandable, right? They're paying you. So that to me makes the video even less credible in terms of what I might really think about the thing. Because don't get me wrong, even when I get a product free, right, I try to highlight the positive aspects of the product and minimize the worst things about it. Now, if something is so terrible that, and usually the compromises are because of the price point. So my caveat will be, yeah, this is not good, but for $99, it's not bad. You know what I mean? So, I try to caveat because a lot of times it's the price point that mitigates any defects this product might have. Uh, I'm trying to think if there's any product that I really can't think of anything that I gave a particularly glowing review on that that was where I minimized the downside of the product. Maybe I can't, because the problem is even when you get something for free, right? Subconsciously, even I might not be consciously doing it, but subconsciously I have a relationship or goodwill with that vendor, right? And I can try to be totally honest about a product, but subconsciously my brain is saying, they were nice enough to give you this. I should be, because I'm always grateful for anything I get. Even as a business, I'm like, they're just going to give me something for free. I try to be gracious about it, right? I'm not. I just can't talk bad about somebody that gives me something. So I try to point out the compromises and some of the cons of a product if there is any, but that's usually offset because of the price point, like the tilt shift lens. I mean, $226 for a tilt shift lens is nothing compared to what you would pay for typically $1,000, $2,000. So the compromises on that are kind of acceptable. I didn't like some of the compromises, and if I needed a tilt shift lens or used one, I might be more excited about it, but I don't really need or use one. Anyway, uh Cindy says, I'm just taking my Lumix G9 Mark II on my next trip to Portugal this weekend with the OM50 300. Okay. Um, Interesting. I'm curious why you bought a G9. I thought you had an OM1. Maybe I'm mistaken. The G9 Mark II, I'm sure it's a fine camera, but it just doesn't appeal to me because I have an OM1. Just like the All-in-One Mark II doesn't really appeal to me because I have the All-in-One. The Mark II adds a few nice things, but not enough for me to drop 2 grand. My post-processing software nowadays is Photo Lab Elite. I only sometimes use Photoshop Elements for special tasks. Yes. Thank you for sharing that, Lasse. Long time viewer. Really appreciate that. Uh, Appreciate the feedback. It is my primary editing software as well. And Marco is here. I don't see it as getting something for free when reviewing a product. If you have to put in 30 hours of testing, plus take the product shots and write a few thousand words for review. That product was uh, most certainly not free. I know, I know what you're saying. Because if I treated this YouTube channel like a business, I really don't. If I treated this like a business, it makes no sense for me to take $100, $200 product and do a review on it, considering the amount of time that I have to put into it. But I was talking more from a subconscious level of uh, how I feel when somebody gives me something in general. If somebody buys me lunch or buys me a cup of coffee, or I'm so grateful, because I don't have to do that, right? But when somebody gives me a product, right, they're doing it because they're doing it for their benefit, right? It's mutually beneficial, but much more beneficial to them when I do a review. So the scales are way off. But when somebody gives me something, I don't look at it like that, right? I don't treat it like a business. I should, right? Because it's my time and stuff. But uh, it's like when somebody does me a small favor, I will return the favor tenfold, right? In real life, because I'm just grateful if somebody does me a favor, I'll return that favor in tenfold. And you'll find that true of most people. If you do someone a small favor, they'll usually return the favor 10 times over. And that's how you build your relationships with people in life and make friends and make friends, not family. Family, you don't make family. Well, I can make my own family, right? If I had a wife. But you know what I'm getting at is so this conversion to getting products as a business, you can't treat it that way. You shouldn't. If you want to be successful in business, you don't treat it like that. You look at it like, what are they getting? What am I getting? And you try and balance that and put that in your advantage as much as possible. And that's why Marco can make a living from what he does, and I can't. I'll never make a living on YouTube, so to speak, or anything I do, because I'm not trying to make a living doing this or even in my photography. I just make enough to get by, and I try to be grateful for the things that I have and the things that people give me or donate, and just be happy and enjoy life. Uh, Now, if out of necessity I have to work harder and do things, uh, I might just get a day job, but I'm just not at that point right now. Fortunately, I'm getting by with what I can squeeze out of, the advertising from YouTube and the photo jobs that I get, every now and then. They've picked up a little bit um, in the spring. I got another job. I had one last week. I got another one coming next week, I think. So I'm getting the occasional job, but and it says, "Oh, Robbie, how are you?" It says, "I will return the favor tenfold." What a wonderful person you are, Rob. Truly appreciate your so generous. Well, I don't know. It's just how I feel sometimes, and I do that even with products, even though they're giving it to me and it's a business. I shouldn't do that, but I can't help who I am. It's just, anyway. All right, Plato, we will see you later. Thanks for dropping in. I appreciate it. And I'm a troglodyte. I use Photoshop 2015. Elements is great software. And Nik Collection 2016. Yeah, those are great. Uh, and Robin says, "Hi, Rob. My wife said we might be able to see the Northern Lights tonight. Rare events for us Marylanders." Ooh, yeah, I got a text message about that too. If it's clear, man, it was raining all night, so we didn't get. I didn't, I didn't even. I was a little disappointed, but that would be kind of cool. I'll keep an eye out for it if I'm still awake, because it gets dark at like 8:30 now, and I'm usually asleep by 9. Um, oops, sorry, I clicked the wrong one, and Lasse has to go. Our son is joining us for Mother's Day dinner. Bye. Okay, Lasse, thanks for coming in. We will see you later or next week. And but yeah, going back to what Marco said, it's certainly not free when somebody sends me something and I spend so many hours like he's talking about testing and doing the video. But I think of it as it's a win-win for me and the viewers, right? So I get a little bit, but you as the viewer that might be interested in a lens or shopping a lens hopefully will benefit. And then I make like 2 or $3 on YouTube in advertising, if that. I think I made like $3 on my last lens review. Unbelievable. But okay, looks like it's pretty quiet here in the chat section. Maybe I should wrap it up. So thanks everyone for being here today. I really appreciate it. You guys are always great, and I appreciate your support today and over the years. As always, I'm very grateful. And I will be back again next week, God willing. Thanks again, and I hope to see you again soon.